I left them there arguing with each other and took a short walk while they figured things out. Once they got the body in the car, I'd drive us up to the International Bridge and turn it in. We'd be home in time to fix breakfast for Mama. Then we'd go to bed and only dream about what could have happened after this night. I walked alone along the riverbank. In the dawning light, it shimmered with the hues of day, fighting away the shadows of night, while the multitude of trees and shrubbery that grew for miles and miles along the riverbank still shrouded the land in shadow. Suddenly, to the left of me, about 10 yards southeast along the river, beyond the twisted path my sisters and I had worn into the thicket, two small figures ran past me in and out of the dusty brush right up to the river's edge. They ran along the bank, skirting it so closely that pebbles flew off their footsteps and bounced down into the water. Their faces were indistinguishable in the dark, and their white outfits were muted by the lack of sunlight, but I could see that they were little boys running away from something or someone. It didn't take very long to see who they were running from. Behind them, a woman in a pale dress came running, screaming at the boys, begging them to stop. Her long black hair whipped behind her as she fought through the brush. It was clear to me she was worried, frantic even, that they might fall into the river. "Ay, mis hijos!" she screamed as she sidestepped ruts and rocks with her small bare feet. The short trees tore at her immaculate white dress, but she didn't care. She pulled herself free of any tree limbs that clawed at her and kept chasing after her children, never losing sight of them. "Hey!" I screamed after the children. They didn't turn to look at me or acknowledge me in any way. They were getting dangerously close to a cliff at the edge of the river. I left the security of our path and darted after them. They still ran parallel to the waters of the Rio Grande, much too close to the current that roared furiously below. The waters were dark and angry, almost violent, nothing like our friendly swimming hole. I sped up, afraid they might lose their footing. Too late, I screamed for them to get away from the edge. In a second, they were falling, both of them, one behind the other. Into the water they went, making loud splashes as they fought to stay afloat. Without thinking, I scrambled up to the edge and jumped in after them. The roar and chilliness of the dark water awakened my senses, and my heart constricted in my chest as I came up for air. I had to fight the undercurrent to keep from being swept away. As I struggled to stay afloat, I looked around wildly for the children who I clearly saw fall into the water seconds before me. They were about 15 feet away from me, being dragged down into the body of a heavy current. Their mother, running along the river, cried and screamed for me to help them. "Ay, mis hijos!" she wailed miserably. I swam with long, even strokes, trying to remain in control of my body, not letting the undertow pull me down. But my efforts were in vain. The water rose over my head and swirled around me like a whirlpool, dragging me deeper and deeper until the thin light of dawn turned into darkness and I couldn't see anything anymore. All was obscurity and cold, and I thought I would drown. What would Mama think? Did I fail my sisters? My lungs ached with the pressure of unreleased air. Just when I was about to give in, the roaring stopped, and I felt myself break through the surface. The fresh morning air hit my lungs like a blow to the chest, and I pressed a fist against my heart as if to stop the pain from killing me. As I coughed and sputtered in agony in the now calm water, I saw one of the boys floating before me. I grabbed his arm and pulled him in. Dragging him over my shoulder, I began to swim toward the riverbank where his mother was crying out for me to bring him to her. When I got close enough, she stepped back. "You're too late. He's drowned," she wailed as she stood watching me struggle with her son's body. At her words, inexplicably, the boy's body slipped from me. It bobbed in the water and wavered in the pre-dawn light, then disappeared before my very eyes. I turned around to look for his brother and saw him drifting a few feet away from me. Before I could dive for him, he vanished like a strange mirage. "Here, let me help you," their mother said, extending her hand to me from above. The hand was cold as a corpse, but I took it anyway. At first, I attributed the coldness to her state of despair or my own soakedness, but when she pulled me out, she spoke again, and what she said made me want to jump right back in the water. "It is always the same way," she said, her expression helpless in a worn, weary face. The woman's hair was long and disheveled, and her long tunic dress was torn and frayed. I could tell it used to be a white robe of some kind when it was new, but it was so old it was gray now. On the whole, she looked unkempt and malnourished, close to death. They drown before I can reach them. It is my nightmare, my destiny, my fate to search endlessly for them by night, only to find them drowned with a sigh of mourning. Recognition entered my mind, and I froze, unable to speak. The woman's eyes softened, and she looked sad. "You know who I am, don't you?" "Yorona?" I whispered the dreadful name before I could censor myself. Most women would be offended to be mistaken for the ghastly apparition, but she did not flinch at the horrific namesake. Instead, her smile was apologetic and teary. It evoked compassion rather than fear. Some call me that, she admitted as she tried to take my hand. Do not be afraid. I cannot harm you. Was she saying she was La Llorona? As much as the idea of talking to a ghost fascinated me, it also frightened me. I had heard so many awful things about La Llorona that I couldn't help it. I pulled away from her and took a few steps back. But you killed your children. It was common knowledge, more than a legend. Every mother on both sides of the border warns their children that La Llorona will get them if they wander too close to the river. I couldn't help but wonder if by playing in it all summer we hadn't cursed ourselves. I know what they say, she admitted. I have heard the stories many times through the centuries, but they are mistaken. I did not drown my chiquitos. You didn't? Then why do they run away from you? I looked back at the dark river, wondering if I had really seen her children drowning. Had I imagined trying to save them? Was it possible I was dreaming all this? La Llorona stepped away from me and turned to the river. She wrapped her arms around herself as if the memory gave her a chill. We were arguing that night, their father, Hernan, and I, about his decision to leave. We fought over the children, dragged them into our pain. Mis hijos were so scared, so confused, that they fled toward the river in darkness and drowned. It was a nightmare I experience every night, a memory that I am forever reliving. I went to stand beside her. Her loss was unimaginable, and suddenly she was very human to me. Why do you look for them if you know they are dead? It is a punishment I impose on myself, La Llorona began. A penance for my part in it. I should have been more careful, made sure they were always safe. I want them to come back to me, but they won't or can't. I do not know the reason behind it, but they are being kept from me. I would never take the children that play at the river the way people say I do. I do not want other children. They could never replace my chiquitos. Believe me, you and your sisters have nothing to worry about. I am not here to harm you. I considered her words and wondered why someone would willingly punish herself for all eternity. It seemed implausible to me. But then again, I was standing at the edge of the river talking to a ghost. Nothing was normal. Nothing made sense. Then what do you want from us? You were chosen for the goodness in your heart, she explained. Like Juan Diego, the most humble of the Virgin's children, you are noble and kind-hearted. You displayed great courage when you jumped into the water to save my sons. Your sister was right when she said finding the body of the drowned man was not an accident. She took my hand once again, her touch still deathly cold. Standing beside the hackberry shrubs with hundreds of empty desiccated cocoons still clinging to their branches and a carpet of butterfly corpses under her feet, La Llorona did not look anything like a malevolent specter. She looked more like a tired, heavily burdened woman. My sisters are waiting, I said, trying to take my hand from her so I might escape if I had to. La Llorona let go of my hand. Please, try to have faith. I'm here in your service, to guide and protect you, she said. I put my hands under my arms to warm them, to protect me from what? Yes, she said, a wry smile curling around her lips. She had a look of age about her, despite appearing no older than Mamma. It was something in her eyes, the sorrow of long ages lived in them. It is an eternal atonement to watch over the children of the sun, the children of my people, the Azteca bloodline. Aztec? I asked, surprised. Mamma never said we were Aztec. Papa was a fair-haired and light-complected, implying a Spanish bloodline rather than Native American. But Mamma did have olive skin, black hair, and dark eyes. Yes, you are a descendant of a great people, she continued, pulling my attention away from my wild, erratic thoughts and making me focus on the situation at hand. At that very moment, the sun burst out from beneath the horizon, and La Llorona's features changed. She went from being a tired woman to looking downright frightening. Her disheveled hair suddenly turned completely white. The loose silvery strands writhed around her head like serpentine ghosts, more fearsome than Medusa's. La Llorona's gaunt face shriveled up like a pale raisin, becoming sallow and ashen, creased by centuries of wrinkles and dark blotches. But it was her eyes that scared me the most. They turned a deep evil black. They glittered like cursed gemstones. I was so terrified I couldn't move, but I trembled where I stood. I couldn't speak for a moment, my throat tightening, and I was having trouble breathing. Don't be afraid, she pleaded. I don't have much time. Once the sun rises completely, I must go back. The gentleness of her voice calmed me a little, and I was able to reply, though I wanted to run away, back to my hermanitas. Go back where? Why are you here? I have been sent here to help you find your way, La Llorona said. There is a path designed for everyone, and everyone must walk in his or her path. This is your path. You must walk it. To refuse would be unfortunate. Unfortunate. The word felt ominous coming from La Llorona herself, and my body stiffened in response. I fought to speak, to get out the words to the question that was suddenly weighing heavily on my mind. Am I going to be cursed, like you, if I don't walk my path? Change must take place. It is important. To remain as you are would lead to isolation. You would be doomed to a lonely existence, ripped apart from those you love. I threw my arms out and let out a frustrated sigh. You're speaking in riddles. I didn't understand what La Llorona wanted me to do. How was I supposed to change, to find my way? What did it even mean? Let me speak plainly, La Llorona began. You must go to El Sacrificio and take the drowned man back to his family. The sun had finished rising, and its full radiance was dissolving. La Llorona's form. She stooped to hide under the shade of the cluster of huasache trees, looking almost translucent. But we don't even know where he is. Sure, we have his wallet, but we're just kids, I began.